Auspicious greetings. Welcome to a new episode of English Dharma Services. My name is Zhi Tong, and today I would like to continue with last week's theme of women in Buddhism. As mentioned in the previous video, Buddhist disciples include bhikshus, bhikshunis, upasakas, and upasikas. The four assembly of Buddhist disciples are equal, and everyone can practice the teachings of the Buddha. Gender, age, nationality are not factors that contribute to a person's liberation from suffering and attainment of awakening. Rather, one's attitude, vows, and diligence are the keys to cultivation. Today's story is about an upasika, or a lay woman disciple. Her name was Samavati. I referenced the book Great Disciples of the Buddha, and I also urge you to read this wonderful book, where you will find beautiful stories about the disciples of the Buddha with representatives from all four assemblies. Samavati was a happy, carefree girl who lived a very happy life with her mother and father. She was known for her beauty, but she was never conscious about it. However, the happy family was forced to abandon their house and flee when pestilence broke out in their hometown. The father remembered that he had an old friend who lived in Kosambi, which is the capital of the kingdom Vamsa. The friend, Ghosaka, was currently the finance minister, and that they hoped Ghosaka could help them. Unfortunately, Samavati's parents caught the pestilence. When they reached the city of Kosambi, they found out that the kingdom had generously set up public alms hall for the refugees, so that they had free food to eat. To take care of her parents, Samavati volunteered to be the one who'd bring the food back. On the first day of arrival, Samavati took 3 portions of food, and on the second day, 2 portions. Finally, on the third day, she only took 1 portion. The man who was distributing all the foods to the refugee had a cynical turn of heart when she saw this beautiful little girl coming over to receive food on the third day. He said, "Have you finally realized the capacity of your stomach?" Samavati was not offended. Instead, she calmly replied, "On the first day, there were 3 of us, my parents and myself. That day, my father succumbed to the plague. On the second day, I only needed food for 2 people. But my mother died yesterday. So today, I only need food for myself." The food distributor was deeply ashamed, and he begged for her forgiveness. After exchanging a few more words, he pitied this young girl who was all alone in the world and proposed to adopt her. Samavati was touched by his kindness and accepted his suggestions. She immediately began helping her new foster father with distributing the food. One can only imagine the chaos in the public alms hall as refugees swarmed in to receive food and help. But Samavati, already showing a sense of calmness and kindness at a very young age, gently guided people into order and made sure that everyone received the food that they need. The people calmed down and took turns receiving food, and they are content with what they had. Soon enough, the news that the public alms hall was taking place without noise and tumult reached the ears of the kingdom's finance minister, Ghosaka. He praised the food distributor, but he modestly replied that it was actually his foster daughter who was responsible for such a change. Ghosaka met with Samavati, and they both found out that Ghosaka was the very person whom the family was trying to seek help from. Ghosaka was quite impressed by Samavati's calm and kind demeanor despite her very young age, and he decided to adopt her as his own daughter. Though the food distributor was sad, he knew that Samavati would have a better future if she grew up in Ghosaka's household. So Samavati went to her beautiful and wealthy new home and grew up safe and happy. One day, a man saw her and immediately fell in love with her. This man was the king, Udena. Though King Udena already had several consorts, he could not forget Samavati and was determined to marry her. When King Udena informed Ghosaka that he wanted to marry his foster daughter, Ghosaka refused, even though he knew that he would be punished by the hot-tempered king for his disobedience. True enough, King Udena was enraged by Ghosaka that he stripped him of his position as the finance minister and exiled him from the country. Samavati was saddened by this turn of events, but not for herself. She was sad that Ghosaka had to experience such suffering on her account. From the kindness and compassion of her heart, she voluntarily agreed to be the king's wife. The king was immediately appeased and restored Ghosaka to his former position and glory. Samavati did not see any inconvenience to herself in this turn of events. She did not feel wronged or suffer by agreeing to such a marriage. Her great love to all the people around her was the constant source of inner strength. Such a decision was not difficult for her, for she put the well-being of other people before herself. Samavati's inner peace and calm brought her harmony in life as one of the queens of King Udena. One of the daily activities that she did was to give her servant, Khujjutara, 8 coins every day to buy flowers for the women's quarters of the palace. Khujjutara was not an honest person. She would only buy 4 coins worth of flowers and kept the other 4 for herself. One day, when Khujjutara went to buy flowers as usual, the florist urged her to stay for a while, for he had invited the great Shakyamuni Buddha and his disciples to receive offerings in his house. At this time, many people had already caught wind that there was a great teacher, a Buddha, a fully enlightened one, teaching people from all kingdoms and from all walks of life the way to be liberated from suffering and attain enlightenment. Khujjutara was interested, and she stayed. As she gazed upon the magnificent appearance of the Buddha and listened to his teaching of the Dharma, she found a sense of inner peace and clarity which she had never experienced before. Her pettiness and selfishness was washed away by the clear and cooling Dharma water. By the time the Buddha concluded his teachings, Khujjutara had already attained the path and fruit of stream entry, which is the first level of attainment of arhatship. The first thing that Khujjutara did after such a wonderful inner transformation was to buy 8 coins worth of flowers and confess to her queen. Samavati was surprised to see the amount of flowers that she received, but was even more surprised to see the change in Khujjutara. She accepted Khujjutara's apology and listened as Khujjutara shared her morning's adventure. Samavati was sensitive to all that was virtuous and righteous, and she listened eagerly to Khujjutara's sharing of the Buddha's teachings. She gave a new task to Khujjutara to visit the Buddha's monastery every day to listen to the Dharma and share it with her in the afternoon. Soon enough, Samavati and her other maidservants became devout practitioners of the Buddha's teachings, and each of them attained the fruit of stream enterer. Through the influence of the Dharma, Samavati became determined to develop her abilities of loving kindness and compassion. She could feel sympathy for all beings and could suffuse everyone with loving kindness and compassion. She was able to develop these faculties so strongly that the Buddha called her the woman lay disciple most skilled in spreading loving kindness. However, a greater test was now approaching Samavati. One of the other queens of King Udena was Magandiya. She was not jealous of Samavati's beauty or the king's love for Samavati. Curiously, Magandiya's hatred towards Samavati was simply because she was Shakyamuni Buddha's disciple. Magandiya hated the Buddha with a passion, a hate so deep and ingrained that she wanted to end anything that was connected to the Buddha. And in this way, she unleashed her hatred towards the Buddha onto Samavati. Magandiya devised many plots to kill Samavati. One of the more serious plots was hiding a poisonous snake in Samavati's room. When the king came over to Samavati's room and saw the snake, he thought that she wanted to kill him and was infuriated. Losing all control, King Udena reached for his bow and arrow and shot Samavati. However, through the power of her loving kindness, the arrow rebounded from her without causing any harm. The king's hatred could not influence her loving concern for him, and this kindness protected her like an invisible shield. When King Udena saw the miracle, he returned to his senses and was deeply shaken. He begged for her forgiveness and was even more convinced of her nobility of character and faithfulness to him. He became interested in the Buddha's teachings when he saw the strength of his queen, and was finally so impressed that he too took refuge under the Buddha. Magandiya, on the other hand, was even more furious that Samavati had once again emerged from her evil plots unscathed. Finally, she devised a plan to burn down Samavati's entire residence palace, with Samavati and her maidservants trapped inside. The plan was all made like an accident, and Magandiya left the kingdom on the guise of a tour so that no suspicion could fall on her. This terrible plan worked, and Samavati, along with all her maidservants, perished in the fire. Such a tragedy spread far and wide across the kingdom. No one could comprehend why such a beautiful, kind, and compassionate queen, beloved by everyone in the kingdom, would fall into such a tragic death. When they asked the Buddha about the future rebirths of the queen and her maidservants, the Buddha briefly replied, "Among these women, some were stream enterers, some were once returners, and some were non-returners. None of these lay disciples had died destitute of the noble fruits." This means that Samavati and all her maidservants had attained different levels of arhatships. They are free from all sensual desire and hate. Moreover, Samavati was free of all identification of her body. Though her physical body burned, her soft, radiant heart, imbued with love and compassion, was unassailable and untouched by the fire. Samavati's last words are, "It would not be an easy matter, even with the knowledge of the Buddha, to determine exactly the number of times our bodies have thus been burned with fire, as we have passed from birth to birth in a beginningless round of existence. Therefore, be heedful." When her maidservants heard this, they meditated on the painful feeling and thereby gained the noble paths and fruits. The Buddha also explained that this tragedy was actually the fruition of a past karmic action committed by Samavati and her maidservants many rebirths ago. King Udena was overwhelmed with grief at Samavati's death. He knew, after thinking much about this matter, who was the perpetrator of this terrible deed. King Udena unleashed all his fury upon his queen Magandiya and her relatives who helped in the crime. Magandiya was punished in a most terrible way, and after death, she continued to suffer in the lower realms. Meanwhile, Samavati was reborn in the heavenly realms where she would reach nirvana or full enlightenment. The different results of love and hate could be seen with exemplary clarity in the lives and deaths of these two queens. One day, the monks were discussing about who was alive and who was dead, based on the stories of the two queens. The Buddha said, "Even though Magandiya was still living, she was as if dead. And while Samavati, though dead, was as if she was alive." The Buddha spoke the following verses. "Heedfulness is the path to the deathless. Heedlessness is the path to death. The heedful one do not die. The heedless are likened to the dead." The wise then, recognizing this as a distinction of heedfulness. In heedfulness rejoice, delighting in the realms of the noble ones. The steadfast meditate persistently. Constantly they firmly strive, aspiring to reach nirvana, the unexiled security from bonds. This is the life of Samavati, the foremost of female lay disciples who dwells in loving kindness. Throughout her life, she showed loving kindness and compassion not just to her loved ones, but even to those who hated her. Even upon the hour of painful death, she contemplated upon the Dharma and did not suffer from external agony. Loving kindness and compassion are her protective armor, shielding her from external harm. Loving kindness and compassion are also her aura, which shone upon those around her. Thank you for listening to this Dharma talk. I hope you'll find Samavati, this wonderful lay Buddhist disciple, an inspiring model. Before we end, I would like to share some activities held by our Shan branch temples with you. The first event is on March 18th, which is a Friday, 7 to 8 p.m. Pacific time, Guang Shilai Temple in San Diego will hold the Thank Buddha It's Friday program. The Dharma talk for this month is Equality and Diversity in Buddhism, given by the Venerable Dr. Karma Leskhe Tsomo. As social justice issues take the spotlight around the world, the world's religions are called to respond and offer solutions for creating a more just and compassionate world. The current focus on social justice is an ideal opportunity for Buddhists to examine questions such as equality and diversity from a Buddhist perspective. This talk will explore Buddhist ways of thinking about these concepts and Buddhist practices for achieving social justice in troubled times. So don't miss out this wonderful and inspiring Dharma talk. The links to sign up are in the description box below. The second activity I would like to share is the online one-day retreat held by Guang Shilai Temple. This online one-day Buddhist retreat is intended to guide people to find peace in their daily life through Buddhist teachings, mindfulness training, discussions, and Q&A sessions. This retreat will be held on March 19 from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific time, and the theme of this retreat is Create Peace of Mind, the Power of Concentration and Compassion. Last but not least, the 2022 spring term of the Guang North America Humanistic Buddhism courses are also beginning. If you would like to have a deeper study and practice of the Dharma, sign up for these wonderful classes given by our Guang Venerables in North America. Thank you again for tuning in to this episode of English Dharma Services, and may you find inspiration and joy in the Dharma. 阿弥陀佛。